personal story that I told Lisa. I have a good friend of mine who I came to the plumbing board from the medical board. And I have a good doctor friend of mine who was on a trip to Las Vegas. And he was seated on the plane and he was making small talk with a guy that was right next door to him or sitting next to him. And he found out that this guy was a journeyman plumber. So my doctor friend told him, said, well, guess what? Said, one of my best friends is the chairman of the plumbing board. My doctor friend said it was the only time in his life that he regrets ever knowing me. He said that plumber never shut up for the entire 3-hour flight. Talking about plumbers having an opinion about everything. He said this plumber went on and bent his ear for 3 solid hours about plumbing issues, and this was wrong and that was wrong. And I told him, I said, welcome to my world. But I thought it was so funny. He said, it's the only time, Frank, in my life that I've regret knowing you. He said, when I told that plumber that I was a friend of yours. But it is a good thing. And earlier I said, I was thinking, I guess it's called the 71K group or something, or is it 71K? Is that right?
Strong, yes.
71K strong or something that sponsored the rally. And that was what an impact that was. And it was. But also there were a lot of people that are not a part of that organization that really participated in the legislative process. And they really were supportive and helpful to us. And I can't think of one single person or organization that was not helpful to us during this legislative process. So even that I single them out as being special, I'm going to tell you, I couldn't count the number of people that helped us on this. Let's talk about number 8. And Lisa, I want you to start us off on this. The subject is item number 8, and for everyone's information, this is strictly a discussion item only, and we're not going to take any action today on this item. But it's something that I want to get a discussion from the board about. No one that has anything to do with plumbing, whether it's home builders, commercial builders, master plumbers, anyone that has anything to do with construction or plumbing, I think there's a universal understanding and belief that we've got a shortage of plumbers in Texas. If you look at the growth of Texas in the last 10 years, we have grown at an average rate, the state, 15.9%. This state of Texas has grown. That is twice the national average of the growth in any other state in Texas. And quite frankly, our industry, and I'm going to include myself, I'm not a plumber, but I'm going to get an honorary plumbing license with no benefits at some point in time because I consider myself a plumber. But we have not kept up. We just have not, there's no getting around it. We've not kept up. And I'm going to say this, and I don't mean to be critical, but I think in many cases, when you look at the legislation that's in place today and the way that you become a plumber and you have upward mobility in the industry, we have put in place some barriers that I think are inappropriate and not necessarily correct. Now, it's in the statute, and we're going to continue to follow the statute. There's no question about that. We don't have an option, even if we didn't want to. But we have put in place, and the industry has put in place, some artificial barriers to entry, as well as some barriers to mobility. The first question I asked Lisa, the first meeting we ever had, sitting in this conference room right in here when I was first appointed in January, I came here from the medical board. I said, Lisa, why does it take longer? Why can I become a doctor in less time than it takes to become a master plumber? In a best case scenario, it takes 8 years to become a master plumber. 3 or 4 to become a journeyman. To become a master plumber, you've got to work 4 years as a journeyman. Help me, Lisa, am I correct or wrong?
You're doing good.
It takes 8 years, thereabouts, maybe 7. In order to be a medical doctor in Texas, You go to school for 4 years, you serve 1 year of residency, and we call you doctor. You can hang up a license and be a doctor in 5 years. If I'm a young person and I'm coming out of high school or coming out of a trade school, and I'm trying to find a career, and I look at a career in plumbing, even consider it, and say it's going to be 8 years before I can reach the top of that ladder. 8 years to me goes by like a blink of an eye as an old man, but to a young person, that's an eternity. And I think the thing that we have failed to do, both it reflected in our legislation as well as our rules, people advance at different rates. There are some young people and some old people that pick it up and they can advance like a rocket ship. They have focused, intense training. They really commit themselves to learning things. They can learn in 6 months what it takes some people 6 years to learn because they really apply themselves. But there's no way for them to get into this industry and excel. It's almost a situation like, well, I paid my dues, so therefore you're going to have to pay your dues before you can get to be anybody in this industry. And it's no wonder to me that we've got somewhat of a shortage. And when we're talking about different ways to enter our industry and become a plumber and upward mobility, I'm not at all suggesting either legislatively or through rule that we eliminate any of these pathways. To the contrary, I think we've got some great pathways. We've got union training programs where they come in, they go to school 6 hours a week at night, and then they work full time during the day all week. They can earn a living, and then at nighttime pick up 6 hours a week. And for some people that fits. And I've looked at the union training programs and I think it's excellent. They really do a fine job. I can't imagine anybody doing any better. PHCC has got a great apprentice program, very similar. You go to school at night, you work during the daytime. And that works for some people. But we have to open up additional pathways in order to excel in this industry, in my opinion. Some are going to be short putts. We might enter into reciprocity agreements with other states, and they recognize our license, we recognize theirs, and that's a way we could pick up plumbers. If states are not willing to do reciprocity agreements with us, it takes two of us to agree to do that. We have the authority, I believe, and our lawyers will correct me as we go through this, but we can recognize a state and their requirements and say they are substantially equivalent to ours and allow them to sit and take our exam without jumping through all the hoops that you have to jump through to be an apprentice in Texas. And I want us to take a serious and fresh look at those ideas in order to get more plumbers. Lisa and I looked this morning. There are 11,000, how many responsible master plumbers are there?
8,600 right now, I think.
8,037 responsible master plumbers. There are like 11,000 master plumbers. If you go back to 2011, guess how many master plumbers we had? 1,000 less. So in 10 years' time, think about this. The population of Texas has grown 15.9% per year for 10 years. We've added 4 million people in the state of Texas, and we've added 1,000 master plumbers in 10 years' time. There's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with that. The average age of a master plumber, what is it, 58, 60?
54.
54.
In their 50s.
Yeah.
The journeyman's 54.
The journeyman average is 54. So we've got a serious problem. And there are a lot of people in the industry, plumbers, who are passionate about their jobs and their careers, and they care about it. But if you do care about it, then you need to sustain it. And we've got to take a different approach at the way we're doing this. And again, I'm not suggesting that we do away with any of the pathways to become a master plumber or a journeyman plumber. But I'm saying that we need to be open to the idea of other pathways that might be substantially equivalent that will provide good plumbers and a future supply of plumbers. So that's why this is on the agenda. And I guess maybe the best thing to do, Ben, I'll get to you.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk first about reciprocity agreements, but Ben, you have a comment before.
Yeah, I will just refer you to 363.5 in our
Hey, we've lost Ben's audio on the live feed.
No. There you are. Okay. Sorry, guys. Rules 363.4 Master Plumber License. You can get your license in 1 year if you have gone through a Department of Labor approved program for the journeyman. So PHCC, just to point them out as an example, offers a 4-year program where you go 1 week every quarter for 4 years. And you obtain your hours and that sort of thing. It's exactly what I did. At that point, they had already changed the rule. You have to wait 4 years after your journeyman. But with the Department of Labor approval on these programs, I only had to wait 1 year. That's one way. So I have my master's in 5 years.
So that one way is.
The DOL approved program.
So congratulations. It takes the same time to become a master plumber through that program as it does to a medical doctor. Lisa, do you have something you want to add?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to just touch on, we've always welcomed as many of those as we could from other states. And one of the things that we looked very carefully at probably 10 years ago when the changes were made to the training course and that 4-year program is an individual coming from another state that already holds a license somewhere that's substantially or closely equivalent to ours. Nobody's going to match us exactly. Those individuals are not required to take the 24 or the 48-hour courses or any of that stuff prior to them taking the exam. So anybody that has a license in a jurisdiction that, like I said, substantially or close to being equivalent can come in here and take an exam very easily. And we've never pushed them away. Now, if we could develop some kind of reciprocity, which would be license for license, that would make it much faster. There was a period of time initially whenever the training program went into place that it was determined that everyone had to take that training program. And we reevaluated that. And so I just want to clarify that those people coming from another state, they don't have to take the training. They can walk right in. And boy, have we had a lot of people from other states in the last few years. And of course, during the storm too. And we've been working on looking at Louisiana and different states around. One of the things that does make ours different is that we have a practical exam where some places do not have a practical exam. So it might be that then they could still take a consistent, some type of examination.
The point I'm trying to make is we've not kept up. We've added 1,000 master plumbers in 10 years, 11 years, and our population has increased by 4 million people. Construction is booming. There's not a state in the nation that has more residential and commercial construction going on than the state of Texas. And we've not kept up. And we're going to have to come up with some additional ways to get people into the plumbing industry and into Texas. And I don't see this as a competitive, I don't see this as a disadvantage to plumbers, because if you look at existing responsible master plumbers, they make their money on services. And unless they can add more plumbers, they can't make any more money. You can just get so much money, make so much money out of X number of plumbers working. If you want to expand and grow your business to meet the demands of the economy, you're going to have to add additional plumbers. And to add additional plumbers, you got to have additional licensed plumbers. That's why we got such a problem with unlicensed plumbers in Texas. There's so much business. It's going to sound strange coming from me, but it's probably a good thing we've got unlicensed plumbers, because I don't think the licensed plumbers could carry the weight. I don't think you could do the job. I hate to say that. And I'm against unlicensed plumbing, and I'm for rooting them out and finding them and eliminating them every time we can. But if we don't want unlicensed plumbing to be an issue, we've got to provide enough licensed plumbers to do the job and do a quality workmanship. So it sounds like I'm being critical. I'm really not being critical. I'm trying to take an objective look at it. I'm just telling you from my perspective, and I think the legislature's perspective, and I'll bet you the home builder's perspective and the commercial building inspector building industry, I would bet you they would say we haven't kept up either. So I think the only thing I do know is that the problem we have and the shortage that we have is not going to be solved by the legislature. It's not going to be solved by the Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners. It's going to be solved by the industry and the economy in Texas. The best thing the state can do, in my opinion, is get the hell out of the way, because the private sector will rise to the occasion. If we will just put in place rules and test people for the minimum standards it takes in order to be a tradesman or a journeyman or a master, and be consistent with it, and be able to deliver it in the volume that's coming in, the industry itself and the economy will take care of it. What we have to guard against is being a stumbling block. So I'm not critical of any modality to get to be a journeyman or a master, whether it be a union program or a PHCC or working for Jake Bob's Plumbing as an apprentice for so many years and then taking my journeyman license and working for him some more and taking a master. All of those are good ways, but we've got to continue to search for additional avenues and opportunities for upward mobility. Dave, I had asked you at the last meeting to take a look at the reciprocity agreements. Anything you want to add on that?
Well, the spreadsheet that you've given us here is very helpful. And I talked with the chairman and I said, yeah, and you just mentioned it kind of in passing, is the practical. Other than Texas, only 7 other states have a practical. What theirs consists of, I'm not sure. But none of the states around us have a practical exam. And the first question I had was, would that be a stumbling block when we say substantially similar? Is the absence of that automatically, kick them out of the equation? I would hope not, because when you look at other things, start looking at things that we may have in common. Our number of field hours. Yes, I agree. We tend to be on the high side as far as number of hours. We're going to have PhDs of plumbing because they're spending 8 years in some cases doing this. And so I think we do kind of exceed some things. I don't know if this has just been a buildup of time over time that we go ahead of other states, but would like to put together, kind of expand the chart that we're looking at and maybe include some of those other factors like the field hours, what it takes to do this or that. I got a lot of information on fees, and I think that that's good, but I think we're focusing in on how much do they know? And I think to develop a spreadsheet similar to this, either with a few additional columns or just, get some information. I started digging on some websites, and I mean, to be honest, Mr. Chairman, I think we knock it out of the park as far as requiring the most. I mean, by God, that's great, but it does put those impediments in front of people. And yeah, if you're looking at a career, you're shaking your head going, man, I can be an electrician a lot quicker. And that's the type of stuff I think we need to look. One, for the training and education side, we need to look at that. But now as far as reciprocity, we can't eliminate a state and say, well, they don't have the same requirements as we do. Maybe we need to look at it, maybe open-minded and say, maybe we should be more like them. And I know that kind of shakes a few cages, but there might not be anything wrong with that in the long term. I think for most part, I would say other states have very good plumbers that are very safe and very good at what they do. And to say that just because we have settled into this mode of what we do, maybe as we're looking at rules, we're looking at tests, we're looking at education, let's look at this as well. Because I think reciprocity is a great way when you look at some of our neighboring territories. You go along the borders of Louisiana and Oklahoma and other places where it's easier for people to get service from another state. You can live in Texas and get service from Louisiana in some parts up near Shreveport and those other areas from a Louisiana plumber because they're closer. So we need to look at this, and I think opening it up and developing a kind of a spreadsheet, something to compare apples to apples. And then maybe look at it and say, what weight do we give the practical exam? Because that does have to be discussed. But we need to maybe ask, why don't any of these states around us? You got to go a long way to find one that does. Even Colorado's, like we were saying, they have a good program, but they don't have a practical. So that's where I was going with it, is to get more information. I'll turn mine
Just
off.
to add on to what you're saying, this spreadsheet was originally developed to put together the various requirements, but also because we were looking at fees during the time it was put together. So it's easily expandable. But the other thing is, on the reason why we've been very open to people from other states that come here, if they've held that license for 2 years, they've been doing some type of practical work, which in our mind is equivalent to, had they taken an exam that had a practical portion. So they may have taken just a written exam, but they've held the license for 2 years. They've gotten a letter of good standing from their state. So we know that they're not, whoever's plumbing that's been ripping off people and that sort of thing. So that was one of the ways that we looked at to be much more liberal. And for years, that practical exam has been discussed, and it's been determined many times that it's a valuable tool. And so we wanted to try to find a way to use that, but allow these other people to come in. Well, if they've been doing the practical portion of it, that was what our thought was. So Louisiana people don't have too hard of a time coming over and just walking in and taking the exam, unless they got licensed yesterday. So, and we actually are going to send someone to take the exam in Louisiana. You don't want to go, Ben?
I hate taking tests.
But we're about to schedule Frank for the exam pretty soon, so.
No, I want an honorary license. I don't want to have to do anything for it. So.
Try the license in Louisiana.
I might do that. Yeah, maybe that do that. You know, I guess there are two ways to skin this cat. One is a reciprocity agreement, and that requires, number one, agreement from the other state to honor our licensees in addition to us honoring their licensees. And I guess in the form of a reciprocity agreement, there is no test to take. Am I right about that? In other words, if I'm from a state that has a reciprocity agreement with Texas, I can move to Texas, apply for my license, and get it. That's an advantage to it. And our plumbers could do the same thing. There are two problems with it. Number one, you got to work out the language of the agreement. Plus, you got to get the other state to agree to it. And in addition to that, all reciprocity agreements in Texas have to be approved by the governor. I'm not sure how quick that process is. I would suspect it doesn't move with lightning speed. I don't know. But the other way to do that is to evaluate their program and make a determination state by state that this particular state has a substantially equivalent program to the state of Texas, in some way by board rule or whatever, say that if you hold a license in good standing in state X, you can apply in the state of Texas and it's recognized, we'll issue the license. So there's a couple, and all of these are subject to legal review. We're bound by statute, and we're just talking right now as a board. Helen, are you on there? I'm not seeing her on there. Helen, if you could hear me, I know that you have corrected me in the past that my thought process was that if a person had been out for 4 years, that we not make them retake the test, but just let them come back in and get the license they had when they went out, provided they brought their CEs up to speed and stuff like that. Helen pointed out to me in the statute, it says you can't do that. You got to take a test to issue a license. It's not a renewal, it's a new license, and you got to take a test to get it. So there's some legal things that we've got to go through the process. And Dave, if you and Bill, and I say Bill, who's our engineer board member, who's an engineer, and he operates in multiple states through reciprocity agreements. If the two of you if the board agrees with this, I would like for you to do an analysis of other states and make a determination and possibly a recommendation of which states you feel are substantially equivalent. And at our next board meeting, let's put it on the agenda and discuss it as a board. And it's not going to be easy. I mean, there's going to be a disagreement on the board, probably. Some of us might be for it, some of us against it. That's what a board's about, is the diversity of viewpoints. But we've got to start somewhere. And I think I would start with Lisa, because Lisa is already doing a lot of what I'm talking about doing. As she's talked about, it's easy for some people, some states, to get a license here. But we need to formalize it so that those states know it, and that our plumbers in Texas know it, so they can actively recruit plumbers to come in to work for them from other states, knowing how easy it is. So if the board is in agreement for us at least pursuing that to look at it, and you're okay with Dave and Bill, I don't know if we're going to call them a committee or just making an assignment, but if you're okay with doing it and the rest of the board's okay with it, let's do that.
We'll see you in September.
Yeah. And I'm going to say this, there are a lot of things that I'm going to ask and make some assignments to you. Please recognize that our staff, in addition to having board meetings and doing things for us, they've got to keep the train on the tracks. They are really, really busy trying to do the day in, the day out stuff, the nuts and bolts. So although I don't do it myself, please be respectful of their time and their other things that they have to do. Let's not load them up with surveys and things like that to the extent we can. Let's try to do what we can ourselves. And so anyway, if you'll bring back, and feel free to come back with specific recommendations. I've given you the name of somebody else that is not a board member, but has got multiple licenses in a lot of states. Maybe other board members might have the names of someone that might have some input about this. We've got some providers that teach in multiple states. They probably could give you some input. So let's take a stab at it. The last thing I want to talk about is testing of TSD graduates for tradesman, plumber, limited license. It's no secret that I'm a big fan of TSTC. I think they do a really, really good job. Representative Matt Schaefer, attached an amendment to the House Bill 636, providing us to work with educational institutions in order for them to sit for a tradesman license. I spoke with him by phone yesterday because I wanted to make sure that what we're talking about is consistent with what he had in mind, of increasing the number of, he's got the same issues that we do. He thinks that we've not produced enough plumbers and put them on the job. And he went a step further than me. I made some comment that I think we've got clear legislative authority as a result of your amendment to enter into these agreements to start licensing these folks who've had specific, focused, intense training for a period of time, license them as tradesmen. He said, well, I'm gonna go a step further. I don't think you have the legislative authority. I think you've got a mandate from my standpoint. He said, I'm not giving you the authority to do it. I'm telling you to do it. So he feels really strongly about it. And I agree with him. He takes it a little bit further. He has asked that and he specifically was talking about high school students, that we work with the Department of Education to develop a curriculum in high school, which would let a high school teach a plumbing curriculum, which would enable them upon graduation and completion of that to take a tradesman course. Now, I don't know about that. That's really reaching in my book, but that's what he intends to do. And what our plan is at this time, he's going to put me in touch with Department of Education representative who's familiar with his legislation and knows what his ideas are. And I'm going to talk to him and see what it is they expect of our board to do with respect to high school curriculums. I'm suspecting it's going to be what Robbie's already done for TSTC. I believe that TSTC graduates should sit for the tradesman exam. But who am I? What do I know? So I asked Ron and Robbie to take a trip to Waco to TSTC. They have met the instructors who teach the courses. We've met with the leadership there, and they have given us a really good outline. And I know Robbie has looked at in detail their curriculum, what they teach, the material. And in a second, I'm going to turn it over to you, Robbie, to talk about that. But in addition to that, TSTC has asked us to work with them to come up with an associate in plumbing degree. Ron, you mentioned somebody in Oklahoma had that. TSTC wants to develop that program themselves and take it a step further from the tradesman and actually get an associate's degree in plumbing, which would entitle them to a journeyman license. And he says he's going to let us, he said, I could appoint 3 or 4 people to an advisory board to develop the curriculum to become a journeyman plumber in school. So that's in the works going forward for 2022. But what we're presented with right now is, do we allow students who have completed the TSTC current program to sit for the tradesman? So with that being said, Robbie, would you share what you have done and what your thoughts are about that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, it was a very eventful trip up to Waco. I was pleasantly surprised with what I saw. Had lots of questions, but what I did see that they have to offer, number one, is the complete package, the complete facility to start with, from A to Z, all aspects of plumbing, residential, commercial, remodel, repair. Um, I then asked the head of their school, Jimmy Bibb, to send me their curriculum. They sent it over. It was more of just like outline topics. I said, I want a greater breakdown of that. They sent me a book. I mean, they really do cover it from A to Z. I mean, they have, for an example, something that you need to know in the field that is just not taught except in the field, and that's digging. They have simulators for digging. They have actual equipment for digging. We saw kids out there actually doing a 1-bathroom rough-in. Forms were set. They had a set of plans. They were measuring. They carry this through the entire program. And I personally felt, and I think Ron agrees with me, that when you go through this 2-year program and you check off all the boxes, you've passed all the different stages, you're ready to at least sit for a tradesman exam. You have the practical experience, because that's what they offer, is a lot of practical experience, as well as, book training. Their instructors are excellent. They're all plumbers, most of them master plumbers. So these kids are learning something. We also found out that there's just a lot of federal funding for programs like this for the students. So if someone wanted to pursue a 2-year associate's degree in plumbing, they probably wouldn't have to pay much, if any, to do this. And they still would have time pursuing this to get a part-time job or get a job, move to Waco. It'd be the same experience as if you graduated high school and went to some university somewhere. So it's another avenue to generate a lot more plumbers. I made the suggestion while we were at the meeting about doing a test and taking this year's graduating class and allowing them to sit for the tradesman exam and see how they do. I felt strongly about that. I think that it'll be a good indicator for us to see just how well they're teaching these people, and if there's any shortfalls, they'll identify themselves. But we may be pleasantly surprised that this particular agency, who has multiple locations throughout the state, it's not just Waco, might be putting out some really good plumbers that we need, because right now we're producing plumbers and they're barely passing these exams here. But when they get out in the field, they really are clueless. They do very sloppy work. It's all about speed, and it's just, there's no pride left. These kids, or these students, they're taught pride. They're learning a love for plumbing, and it's something that they've selected to do. Something they want to, make their career, hang their hat on. And again, I just cannot tell you how impressed I was after reading through the line by line, multiple pages of what they teach these kids. It's pretty concise, and they should have no problem passing our tradesman exam. And I'm not sure when we're going to get that first group, if we are going to get that first group in, but they have a graduating class they have a graduating class August, September, and we'd like to bring them down here. And let's just see what they can do. Let's see if they can pass. If they do, we're going to have that many more tradesmen plumbers out there. and go away from the non-traditional approach that we've just been doing since the 40s, and think out of the box and do something new. So
Yeah, I would love to add a couple of things. Milton, probably that was exactly how I felt. But one of the things that impressed me with the main instructor down there is he made it abundantly clear. I don't want to teach kids to pass your test. I want to teach them plumbing. It really impressed me. And, you know, in our industry, and I'm as guilty as anybody, you hire kids, got great learning ethic, good work ethic, and you put him with a guy, and that's what he does. And he does that for 2 years, and then he tries to learn some other parts. These kids are getting exposed, like he said, to the full package. They were in there cutting coupons on copper. They, you know, very thing you have to do here, and sizing. And then the last thing that I thought was impressive, that they're working very hard, not just the trade skills, but they're trying to teach some soft skills as far as customer service. I think it is the best hidden gem in this state for all trades, not just plumbing, for all trades. That was the most impressive thing I've seen in a long time. So I think we should set this class down, see how they do. And, you know, I'm not for cheapening getting a plumbing license in Texas, but I think these kids are going to know a lot more than you think they're going to know.
Did any of the board members have any questions of Ron or Robbie on this, or myself, about TSBC graduates? Concerns going forward?
Not a question, but a comment. I think this is outstanding, and I agree with Ron's statement. I think the TSTC programs are one of the best hidden gems in the state for trades education, and I'd be all in favor of going forward with some kind of accelerated path for those students.
I think clearly we have the authority to do so, if not the mandate to do so. Something else I'm going to tell you that I'm impressed with. Jeff Kilgore is the vice chancellor, and I asked him, "What is your capacity for putting out graduates?" He says, "I have no capacity." He said, "As long as I have folks that want to take the plumbing trade, we will make space for them and we'll hire instructors for them." He says, "I don't put caps on." So I think it's going to be a great resource.
One other thing that I thought it was interesting from Jeff is post-freeze. I think right now they have 12 or 15 students in their current class. Starting in the fall after the freeze, they've got 45 applicants. And so that's about an 18-month period for them to be able to get tradesmen. That's 45 more plumbers we can put in the business pretty quick.
Yeah. I think it's got the potential of being big, and I want to make something clear. Is why TSTC? Well, number one, their goals and our goals are identically aligned. They've indicated a cooperation, but most importantly, they're the only school of their kind that's also a state agency. We can easily do interagency agreements and work with them, because unlike other private educational institutions, they're not state agencies. TSTC is a state agency just like we are. So it's easy for us to enter in cooperative agreements. I just can't tell you how impressed that I am that they would make a commitment of $1,300,000 based upon just a visit and a conversation with us, that we're willing to work with them. I mean, that's putting your money where your mouth is.
No doubt. Should we?
But let me, I'm going to finish this thought, because as much as I think of TSTC, and I thought that from the first day I met them and the first day I became exposed to them, what we're talking about is not exclusive to TSTC. The curriculum that they're putting together, if another community college or another school wants to put together the same or a similar curriculum, then we should do the same thing with them. This is not an exclusive deal with TSTC, which leads me to my next thing. And I don't want anybody to fall out of their seat. We're not a industry association in any shape, form, or fashion. We're a regulatory oversight agency. And this really kind of, but I believe we have legislative mandate to do so. Part of what we do is outreach, is we try to increase the number of plumbers. We work with the Department of, who's it called, Workforce Commission, to try to increase the number of plumbers. I would love to see our industry raise $3 to $4 million in the next 5 years by responsible master plumbers and plumbing companies providing scholarships to attend plumbing courses to become a plumber, high school scholarships. And that's whoa, that's a huge amount of money. And it is a lot of money. We've got 8,037 responsible master plumbers in Texas. If 20% of them committed $2,500, you're at $4 million. Now, we may or not get there. It may be less. And it's not something, it's not a requirement on the part of the Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners. Has nothing to do with us, but it does directly talk about outreach. And I hope that the associations are listening to me. I hope the Mechanical Contractors Association are listening to us. PHCC is listening to us, individual plumbing companies. I listen to AM radio. You can't go 15 minutes without an advertisement for a plumbing company on AM radio. Take $2,500 of your advertising budget and set it aside for a high school scholarship for a young student who wants to pursue a career in college. Think of the impact that would make over a 5 or 10 year period getting people into college. Now it's, I'm getting text here from Venus. She's probably going crazy because I'm getting into something I shouldn't do. But I'm going to tell you, it's something that the Home Builders Association should be putting up scholarship. If they're the ones that are hurting, that they need plumbers, put their money where their mouth is. Get home builders, get Perry Homes and your company and everyone else to provide a high school scholarship for a career in plumbing. $2,500 a year. They drop that much money on an ad on the radio. And instead you can put your name out before 1,000 clapping parents, a scholarship program. Let them go to TSTC, let them go to someplace else that's got a plumbing program. But I think we're going to have to step up to the plate and do our part. And what I'm talking, that's a long-term situation. But it can be done. And that's what I'm saying, that the problem will be solved. What's wrong with providers? Educational providers. Who in the world is going to benefit more from more plumbers than educational providers, CE providers? Why are they not providing $2,500 a year to promote a plumber or get a young person into the industry?
Is this a fund that Richard will be taking track of?
I probably said more than I should say about this, but I consider it falling under the auspices of our outreach. And Lisa has told me that outreach is a part of our responsibility. But outreach to me is a lot more than showing up at some trade show down in Houston twice a year. Outreach is throwing out some ideas in hopes that plumbing companies, building companies, mechanical contractors, manufacturers see the need and they step up to the plate. It's a tax deductible thing. Why can I say do this? Because you know what? I did it myself. I've personally established an endowment for $5,000 a year for a high school graduate, $2,500 that will go to pursuit of a college degree, and $2,500 will be for pursuing a trade at a trade school. So if I can do it, certainly someone who benefits from increasing the number of plumbers and who cries the most about not having enough of them, surely they can find $2,500 a year in their budget to do it. So that's a long-term something that I hope people will consider. I hope somebody would pick it up and run with it. I don't see us having a role in it other than maybe at some point we can show them, give them resources of where to go. It's easy to do. Any high school counselor can help you set it up. There are community foundations that they'll do everything for you. They'll do the selection, they'll do the applications, they'll promote it for you. They'll do everything. But we've got to step up to the plate. And sorry, I didn't mean to take it over, but anything, what, did you have something else? Well, I tell you, let's leave it at this. On the tradesman, the TSTC, that's where we got started on all this. Let's ask Helen and Vina to take a look at this and find out what, if anything, we need to do in order to license TST graduates who complete the program as tradesmen. And there are going to be some out there in the industry. I'm not hiring anybody that's coming right out of school wet behind the ears. Well, you know what I would say to them? Don't hire them. Yeah, don't hire them. If you don't like them, don't hire them. But I got news for you. There's somebody right next door that's going to hire them, and I think they're going to be good students. Yeah.
Green is green, but they have to start somewhere.
You know what? And everybody's trained. I mean, you've got to train everyone. I don't care who they are. But these folks have got, and I totally agree with Ron and Robbie, they get focused, intense training full time, a year and a half, class and practical, lab, classroom, simulated equipment. But they get more experience in a year and a half than some apprentices do in working 5 years. So, you know, some apprentices work for 5 years and they're eligible to sit for the tradesman, and all they've ever done is carry parts or set tubs. But yet they're eligible to sit for the tradesman license. And the way I look at it, they either pass it or they don't. If they pass it, why shouldn't they get a tradesman license? Then it's up to the employer whether they want to hire them or not. So Lisa, let's spend some time and find out what, if anything, we need to do in order to allow these graduates from TSTC to sit for a tradesman exam. And if there are anyone else in any of your communities that are community colleges that offer plumbing programs, the same offer we're making with them is open to any educational institution in Texas. So
Can I add one thing?
please.
Well, this would be an opportunity based on how they test out and to somehow make a determination on the number of classroom hours and or the types of studies that they did to be equivalent to the on-the-job hours that they need. Would it not? Because we've had the discussion about the on-the-job hours before. Robbie and I have talked about this, that we needed to find a way to come up to say that, gosh, if a person did X, Y, and Z and they did it in a classroom, what's it equivalent to? And what you just said kind of takes me there, because you've got some, and we had one yesterday that showed to have the hours, but he left because he said, I've never done this. So, and it's not uncommon. We probably get 1 or 2 a week. But I'm just saying that based on what we get out of this test run, so to speak.
I think that what you're saying, it might be true, but I think what we have to do is, if we and Robbie and Ron have looked at the curriculum the TSTC is providing and the types of programs, if X, Y, and Z community college came to us and says, hey, we got a program just like that, we teach the same thing, then we have an obligation to take a look at that program. If it's substantially equivalent as the TSTC one, they're in like Flint once they complete their program. So this is not an exclusive deal with TSTC.
Yeah.
I don't think we have to do that equivalence, Lisa, is what I'm saying. I think the Schaefer Amendment gives us clear authority. If they complete a program that the board has approved the curriculum, they can sit for a tradesman license.
Without on-the-job hours.
That's what he says. There's nothing in there about on the job hours. But just for your information, a part of the curriculum of TSTC is they actually do work for a plumbing company.
That was my point. I think it's a 3-semester program. The third semester, they have to do on-the-job work.
Right. And some of them have an internship. And what I'm asking for, I'm just, it's coming to me that this will be a great example of what those people do based on how we put the guidelines together to say, oh, okay, this program, if they're all the same as TSTC's, it'll be easy. And if they test out and it looks like that equivalent covers all of the on-the-job site hours, bam, we're
Ready to go.
yeah. But I'm just saying, to me, it seems like in addition to everything we're saying, I'm seeing this,
Okay.
this will be one of our determining factors to determine
Hey,
did
Lisa,
they
can you
learn.
hear
But
us?
it looks like several of them have
1 second, Helen.
internships to get a lot of the hours. So anyway, just a thought. My wheels are spinning.
Okay. Helen, you wanted to say something, or Vina, one of you.
I just wanted to go and point us back to the statute of some of the things that we've been talking about. The chairman earlier mentioned the Associate of Applied Science degree. And so that's been in statute for a while. That's under section 1301.354. So that's certainly an option going forward. I think the Schaefer Amendment we've been referring to more recently is in section 14 of House Bill 363 for any of the board members, for anybody who's listening in, so they know where to go to review that. One of the subsections of 1301.3542 talks about TSBPE has the authority to adopt rules necessary to implement this section. And so something we may want to look at is, what courses do we consider to be required before someone can take the tradesman exam, and whether it's modeled after TSTC or other ideas that the board members have, and just kind of make that criteria applicable to everyone. That way we can have, as you were saying, from other colleges, really set what we think the minimum should be, and then allow anybody to come take the test once they meet those requirements.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's exactly what we do need to do. So that, Ron, go ahead.
Well, I think that leads into what TSTC was also looking for us in development of the associate's degree, that we help them develop that program. Well, when this first group comes in and tests, that's going to give us a good feel of what they're learning, and if there are some deficiencies, what they need to add. So I think it all kind of can tie together as we go forward.
Let's
I think, Frank, I think
let's work on as a goal for next September's meeting to do that. Helen, go ahead.
Oh, I was just pointing out that you were muted, but I think it might be, per the chairman's prerogative, beneficial to have a working group, those that have gone to TSTC, maybe other schools coming together to talk about what courses would be necessary to take before someone's eligible to take the tradesman. And if they do get that Associates of Applied Science degree, I believe they're also eligible to take the journeyman. And so we'd really want to set that criteria. And I think the Schaefer Amendment calls for us to develop it, maybe not just for high schools, but also not just for career technical education, but also institutions of higher education. So we just set those standards, and then open it up as this alternative means for licensing to really increase our numbers of plumbers.
I agree, Helen, with what you're saying, but I don't want to take the bite out of the journeyman or the associate's degree yet. Am I okay? I think we need to focus on licensing these current graduates as tradesmen, and as we evolve, we'll start developing that associate's degree as we go forward. I love your idea. As far, I don't know how Ron and Robbie feel about this, but I would feel real comfortable with taking TSTC's current curriculum that Robbie and Ron have already looked at, and as master plumbers know what it takes, using that as a template for what is acceptable standards going forward. But I think you're right. We have to put it in rule so that other schools don't have to call us and ask us. They can look at the rule and see we meet these standards just like PSTC. So therefore, we're sending our graduates over there too. So I think that's exactly what we need to do and what I would like to do. So.
Right, a neutral playing field for everyone, and then if there are any deficiencies that we find, hey, maybe they need so many hours working in the field to be equivalent, or whatever supplemental requirement there might be. Yeah.
The thing that I'm looking at in the safeguard that we have is, and I made a commitment back in January that we're not going to dumb down our test in order to get more plumbers. We're not going to make our test easier just in order to increase our numbers. So if these graduates can pass the tradesman test that everyone else is passing, why should they not be tradesmen? We've got to remember, whether it be a tradesman or a journeyman or a master, just because you pass the test doesn't mean you're the top of your class. It means you meet the minimum qualifications in order to hold a tradesman license, a journeyman, or a master's. Not that you're the number one in your class. I keep referring back to doctors. The joke there is, what do you call the doctor that finishes dead last in his medical school? You call him doctor. And that's the same way with a tradesman. I mean, if they can pass those minimum standards, they're tradesmen. So we're not going to dumb the test down. If anything, over a period of time, we're going to tighten it up and make it a little tougher. But as long as we keep those standards the same, I think we've got a great opportunity. And especially if the industry will get behind us and start providing incentives for young people to get into plumbing and careers for plumbing. Even the people that don't get the scholarship, you hear 100 or 200 or 300 students saying, well, heck, that's an option I might take a look at. Even if they don't get the scholarship, it might be something they take a look at, get into. So I think that we've got a lot of opportunities. It's just a matter of us availing ourselves of it. Yeah. Okay. No, I don't. You can say anything you want to.
There's also some associate trade degrees that for individuals that have came from other states too, that we've actually looked at, and we've had to look at them as, are they close to equivalent to the 48 hours, and have substituted some of those things before too. So that's another thing that we've done. And St. Philip's College has submitted more than once some outlines on how their associate's degree works, and some of there's a couple of other ones, and there's some high schools that have put together some trade school items. So there's a lot of stuff out there, and we try to be as liberal as we can with what we have to work with right now, but this will give us even more of an avenue anyway.
Well, it's all about increasing the number of plumbers. So whatever we can do to move that needle, increase that number, and keep our standards the same, we're doing what we're supposed to do. So, and as far as who you hire, responsible master plumbers decide to hire, if you want to hold out for somebody that's been working as a plumber for 15 years, I don't want to hire anybody else, stick with it. But if you want a young, innovative person that's just out of school, that's had some focused, intense training, and then teaching your way or her your way, then those are going to be available. It's all about options. It's not about eliminating programs. It's about increasing pathways for entry and upward mobility in them. So thank you for indulging me for that discussion. Board, thank you for your comments, for Ron and Robbie, the work you did with TSTC. And are we to any final thoughts on that before we move on? I think we're to public comment, right? Dawn, have we got anybody? I know we've got one sitting right here in front of me.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if we've covered agenda item 9.
What was that?
Board discussion of strategies for increasing compliance.
Thank you. We certainly haven't. Thank you for pointing that out to me. That's a big one. That's put on here. And I want the board's feedback on this. Every board meeting, we have cases where either we have agreed orders that have been finalized, or we have cease and desist orders, or we have default orders against plumbers. As I said earlier, we're not about enforcement and gaining out penalties. We're about compliance. And I believe one way, here I go again, doctors, one of the ways that we can increase compliance if we will publicize what we're doing here against those who are in non-compliance. One of the most widely read publications in the medical board, we put out a lot of crap, but one document that every doctor has told me they read after every board meeting, we send out a list by name of the doctors who got agreed orders against them with details about what they did wrong and how much we penalized. Doctors tell me they read that like a Bible, because number one, they want to see if they're doing the same thing in their own organization and fix it. And number two, did I go to medical school with that guy or gal? So they read every single line of it. And I would like to see us and see what the board thinks about us more widely publicizing the agreed orders and the penalties that we have against plumbers. Put it on our website, send it to local newspapers, see if they'll print it, distribute it by email to everybody we can get our hands on. And I've got a feeling that we might find it helps us in compliance. The bad news is the people that are on that list are going to be screaming and crying and bawling. What are you doing? But you know what? Anything we put out is public information. It's not anything that's confidential or nothing that is subject to appeal. It's a final determination by the board. And if we will publicize that, I believe other plumbing companies are, number one, they're going to read it to see if they know the plumber. And number two, they're going to check their own operation to make sure that I'm not doing exactly the same thing they were doing, which is going to increase our compliance. Does anyone have an objection to us moving in that direction? Or Ben, anything?
No, I think it's a great idea. Other plumbers will obviously look at it, but really we're here for the benefit of the consumer. And the consumer needs to know who they're hiring if they're not asking for a license, or if they need to know where to find information on somebody that they want to hire. This is a good source for them.
Yeah, I would love to see us after every board meeting have a tab on the front page of our website, agreed orders, whether it be default or agreed orders or whatever it is, the penalties that we handed out in as much detail as we can about it, including the amounts they got fined.
Now I was going to comment that we call that negative marketing. I think there's a place for it because yes, in the associations I belong to, yes, I read those exact same pages you're talking about for the same reasons. But I also think perhaps, if you belong to Facebook groups or so, neighborhood groups, like my neighborhood has a Facebook page, and people are always on there asking about all sorts of things, from whose dog is this to, hey, my pipes burst, who do I call? I know we have $0 probably in the budget for any type of marketing, but there's all sorts of things we could do for free on places like Facebook and things where we can create links to public service announcements when we have disasters, or just, hey, are you looking for, it could be any professional trade. Did you know in the state of Texas, whether it's TDLR or the plumbing board, that the guy coming into your home needs to have this license, da, 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 and blah, blah, blah. Make sure you ask. Something that's just educating the public to what the rules are and that they're dealing with reputable people. Yes, it would be nice to have some money to create a video or something like that, but I think maybe starting off on social media is a place to go. And I too have create just a little video ourselves and then post it and then link it to wherever you want to. And you can put it in a million places all over the place for free. No money involved. But I think if the goal is to get the message out there to the public, to plumbers in general, then we could also perform a service and get it out there in a positive light as well.
I think it's a great idea, and I think there's a lot of power in social media. And I think that's a great idea, and I think there's a lot of power in social media. And as Lisa and I have talked about this falls under the area of outreach, communications. And as we further develop that program with the new monies and the organization that Lisa's doing, I see us having a presence on social media, doing exactly what you're talking about. The one thing I'll tell you, if you put this link on your front page of your website and make it where it can be linked, every damn plumber that didn't get cited is going to link it and put it on their Facebook page to show that they're not on it. If I know these plumbers, you won't have any problem getting it distributed if you provide it. And I think that's a good thing. And believe me, I'm not doing it to punish anybody or embarrass anybody, but our job is compliance. And that's a tool you use to get compliance in the industry. And Ben.
I've been told in the past that we as board members, correct me if I'm wrong, Dina, we can't really conduct any board business online, right? So it would probably be inappropriate for somebody like one of us to be posting this in those.
Oh, no question about it.
Yeah, so maybe the staff or we push the information to the page administrator and then.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It won't be board members ourselves doing it. And let me add something now that you mentioned that. Be very mindful. I've asked Bill and you, Ben, and Dave, to work on these projects of reciprocity and UN enforcement with Milton.
Somebody's muted or hooked on.
Be very mindful of what we talked about early on about a walking core. Don't let your discussion wander off and talk to another board member about what you're doing. Be sure that whatever you do and whatever you uncover or whatever questions you have, hold them until we get to a board meeting so we can discuss them in open forum. I don't want any of you guys getting in trouble by what's known as this walking quorum that, you tell Robbie and Robbie tells Ron and Ron tells Ben, and then we get ourselves in trouble. So the work that you're doing outside the board, be sure to keep it to yourselves and not share it with other board members. So now we done? Except you had a comment.
And I wanted, because everyone's newer, we never had an outreach and education strategy before, nor the money for it, nor staff for it. It takes more than 5 minutes to put everything out on social media. However, we did do two videos that we have that are about us, what we do, and that are consumer oriented, that are on our website. And we have in the works 2 other videos that are directed towards career days, plumbers, how do you become a plumber and that sort of thing. And which is going to have some filming in it that will allow them to understand the type of work and training that they need, so on and so forth. And so there's all these parts to the outreach and career, and Mr. Denton and I, we've talked about it immensely because we got this strategy, but we were never able to use it because COVID hit. And so we started doing the videos to try to get us there. But in the same turn, we have all of the penalties underneath each license right now. But what we're in the process of developing is something similar to, you just open it and you see all the board orders that we just did, and they'll just be in one bunch. And a lot of the providers right now, they take the orders and they post them up in their classes, and boy, they like nothing better than to end up with somebody that's on an order and they're in the class. That really sets everybody off. But still, it'll just be it'll be a tab on our, we are getting there, and there'll be a tab on the website, and it'll be all the orders. And if you're good with it, we'll put I think we really need to put the default orders along with the administrative penalty orders, because the default orders in most cases contain the unlicensed people. And so those will be things that they definitely want to look at. And I don't know if you want to put revocations or not. That would
You
be
know, I
up to
want
y'all.
anything, my thought is anything that's public information that the public can get, I want to put it on there.
Okay. Well, what we might do is we might just make, and I'm looking at Kevin because Kevin's going to help me do all this. We might just have a category for each type for revocation, default
That's fine.
orders, and agreed.
You know,
And the agreed penalty orders, the order itself has what they did, how much it cost, and the fact that they agreed to pay it. So it's pretty informative just the way it is. And then the default orders actually have, we keep those on an individual list, but whenever you read the orders themselves, it has all the details too. So the material's there. It's just a matter of how we put it out there. And we'd love to do that.
anyone
I would just say, I think it's appropriate to put it on the website like she's talking about. I don't know that we burden the staff with disseminating it to news media and that type of thing. I think that's probably not the best use of staff time. Just my thought.
And I concur with that. That's basically what happens with the Board of Professional Engineers in the 40 jurisdictions that I'm licensed in.
Oh, we lost Bill.
I agree with you. The only thing is, once you establish a database, various media outlets, it's just a matter of linking an email and shooting it to them. It's not a, and I'm with you. I don't want to spend staff time.
They'll pick it
I don't
up.
want to overkill it.
Yeah.
But I also want to make sure we're doing an adequate job of publicizing what we're doing. So, anyone else? Helen and Vina, are we down to public comment now?
Yes.
Okay. Dawn, do we have anyone after all this? Does anybody have anything else to say?
We do have Mr. Matthew Wynn.
Okay, Mr. Wynn, are you there?
I am. I had chimed in there in the chat that appreciate all the ground you've covered, so I'm just here for resource only.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wynn.
And we have Mr. Huberger.
Nobody else online? Because I'm fixing to turn this over to Mr. Huber. You've been sitting here the whole time. and have listened to
see the
all this.
chat.
You're a trooper. And he also testified before the Senate Business and Commerce Committee for us in our favor. Was very influential. Was a good
What
friend
about
of
previous
ours.
to that?
I'm thrilled to death to welcome you here. So the floor is yours.
I want to see all of it.
We're back done.
Who's this?
Probably 9 months, 7 months worth of things. It's been more than interesting.
Mhm.
I mean, I've not heard anything before that I really disagree with. I mean, the comments that I think Chairman Denton got a hold of my notes and started reading.
I've got sources.
I just found a few notes here to me. The pass rate you talked about this morning, 70% range. That's not a bad pass rate. A bicycle is going to be better.
Okay.
The backflow assembly tester pass rate is in the 46, 47% range, and has been that number for years and years. So 70% as a plumber is not bad in my estimation. How long does it take to become a plumber? That was mentioned. When I started the plumbing trade 50 years ago this year, or when I became a journeyman plumber 50 years ago, all you had to be was 18 years of age. Come to Austin, pass a test. Hold that journeyman's license 1 year, come to Austin, pass a test, you become a master. Did I know everything I needed to know to be a master plumber or journeyman plumber when I got that license? No. Do the people know everything they need to know now when they pass the test? It's the same answer, still no. It's a never-ending experience. The education and training never stops. Just because you pass a test, like you said earlier, Chairman Dent, that doesn't mean you're going to go to the field and do the work right. You know, we could take anybody in the room, anybody in the state, and we could teach them how to do the practical part of the exam. You know, cutting a piece of pipe, threading it, soldering it, brazing it, making a solvent weld joint. If you go do it in a classroom setting, you can teach somebody how to be proficient at that real fast. That doesn't mean when they get in the field they're going to do it right. We've got plumbers right now today not assembling pipes, fittings and valves and so forth in the field correctly. They choose not to do it because they've not been taught right. I could name you 2 master plumbers right now, and I'm not going to do it because I'm going to be politically correct, even though it's going to surprise my wife when I do it. But I could name you 2 master plumbers that worked for me over the years. I was not comfortable sending them to change a faucet washer without somebody watching them. I'm serious. Just because you've got a license doesn't mean you're going to do it right. We need enforcement, and we need enforcement against the responsible master plumber, plumbing contractor, whatever we choose to call that individual that's in charge of that company. They ensure that they hire properly trained, qualified individuals to do the plumbing work with the proper license. And it's up to us as plumbers to work towards getting that. We've got to all work towards the betterment of the plumbing trade. You know, one size doesn't fit all. It might take somebody 10, 15 years before they're ready to take that tradesman exam. It might take someone else, like you mentioned earlier, just a matter of months. I've got a friend that's an RMP, owns his own business. He's talked to me a number of times. He's got an apprentice working right now. And he said there's not a doubt in his mind that young man could not pass the journeyman's exam today. Said he's that good at what he does. So, you know, we've got to get out of that mindset. I had to do this training. Everybody's got to do it. We've got to change our mindset. And thank you, and I'm here to help any way I can.
Thank you, Ms. Schuberger, for all you do and all you've done over the years. Anyone else, Don?
No, sir.
Wear everybody else out? Okay. Gentlemen, I apologize for the length of the meeting and the size of the agenda, but I believe, and I hope you do too, that there's nothing we've discussed today that's not important and critical to our industry. I think, what did you put on as a recommended next date, Lisa? September the 22nd, was it? I don't. Is that correct? 22nd?
We need that time because we have to close out the end of the year and I really want to finish these other contracts.
Is everyone all right with that? We.
The 22nd.
22nd, okay.
I don't think I can be.
What's the week before that?
13th through the 17th.
You know, I hate to do this. I'm not going to push it out too much further than 22nd. So I know there are a couple of people who said they're not sure they can be here. We'll throw out, we're going to do a better job of polling you guys and trying to peg a date and stick with it this time. So give us a couple of weeks to come up with two dates, and let's see if we can. It may not be on a Wednesday. Is that okay?
I can meet the 21st.
Okay.
Is there a preferred day of the week?
No, I think we kind of decided this was as good a day as any for everybody, but that doesn't mean we couldn't meet on a Thursday or meet on a Tuesday or something like that. So we'll throw out a date in that September 22nd in the next couple of weeks for you to lock in for us. Okay.
Goes on in August and the first 2 weeks of September. So
I'm gonna go beyond recommendations for future board meeting agenda items. We've already talked about that as we went through. Does anyone else have anything they wish to bring up at this time before we adjourn? Lisa, are you deciding if there's something else you want to bring up?
I thought we had something that we said we were going to put on. I guess that was the enforcement matrix.
Yeah. The penalty matrix.
Yeah. For next board meeting to
Yeah,
discuss.
Milton and Ben are
Okay.
going to be working on that, and we'll talk about that in our next board.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if there's no further business to conduct, meeting adjourned.